Thank you. It's really good to be here tonight. I'm going to try to get this thing to stick in there. And if you have trouble hearing me, just let me know. You guys have a great club over here and a very nice dinner and very nice people. So thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Mary, for the invite, and John. I really appreciate that. I came here tonight to talk a lot about the Gateway Pundit story, which is really, it's an American story, and I'm going to bring some information. I'm going to share it with you. Some things that you have no idea of what's going on today about how conservatives are being targeted and destroyed. And I can talk about that from my firsthand experience. Wikipedia has become a source for the left of propaganda. And several years ago, you could go to Wikipedia. It wasn't always accurate, but you had a pretty good feel on things. Today, what has happened is, just like the left has operated in all of these different areas, right? The left has 5, 10, 20-year plans. They know they know where they're going. They know what they want to do. And a big part of their plan is to destroy, I believe, the fabric of our country. I just don't see anything good coming out of that party today. I really have the more I pay attention, the more I learn. And I've been doing this since 2004. I just don't see any goodness at this point that I see that they're benefiting our country in any way, but they're very good at politics, and they're very good at planning, and they're very cunning. And what they do is they moved into Wikipedia, and it's just another new area now where they control the message. And how it works is, with Wikipedia, there's different layers of editors. And so my profile was fine for, till a year or so ago. And then Gateway Pundit had massive success in 2016. We were one of the few websites, conservative publishers, that supported Donald Trump. I didn't have a problem with that. I know people had their favorite candidate. When I saw Donald and Melania come down that escalator, I was in. I jumped on board. I thought they were phenomenal. I think they were what the country needed. I was shocked that in his first speech he said, we're going to build a wall. I was like, where'd that come from? It was so fresh and new and bold and disruptive. And that's what we have as a president, and it's absolutely what we need. We need some people like Donald Trump. I don't think anybody could do what he's done. We may have different views of him, but I just really appreciate what he's doing. We supported Donald Trump, and a lot of my friends who are in the conservative movement, these, the National Review and the Weekly Standard and Hot Air and Town Hall, and all these people were very upset because I was supporting Donald Trump. And it ended up that we picked the winner, and we picked it right away. And I don't know what it was. I think it's because I'm in the middle of America, and I grew up in Iowa, and then I've lived in St. Louis for several years. But I can completely, there's a different feel out here. I think I really appreciate my history and my roots and what my family went through in Iowa, which is similar to what people went through in Illinois. And so I really, I think when you're spoken down to so much, for so many years, it's stunning to me that people still vote for Democrats when they talk down to you all the time. How can you be called, a racist, or your white privilege, or homophobic, or whatever it is, sexist? It's just, I don't know what's so appealing about that thought process over on the left, but they do have some success. But with Wikipedia, they moved into the upper levels of Wikipedia, the left has. And so I have struggled with trying to take some of these falsehoods off of my page. And I do know that someone had told me they had made a correction. They said, Jim, I made a correction on your page. I just want you to know it was at 3 a.m. Within 10 minutes, the left had come in and erased it and put some other things up. So I don't know what kind of a plan they have over there. I know that they're very smart and tactical, like I said. But I believe that it's an intentional plan. I believe that it's just another way that they control the narrative. What happened in 2016 was the left lost the narrative. They believed that because they owned the mainstream media and because they control, television and newspapers and, all of these channels and the top newspapers in the country except for the Wall Street Journal, there's just a few outlets. They thought that everybody believed the way they do and that Hillary was going to win. They were so shocked on election night. I wasn't, and a lot of my friends weren't, and obviously, it was a great night. But so what they did is they looked at things, and after the 2016 election, early in 2017, a study came out from Columbia Journalism Review, which is the top journalism school in America. And I write about this because I was stunned. What they found was that conservatives, they didn't listen. Conservatives are done with the mainstream media. We don't believe what they say. We've moved away from them. Conservatives went to social media to a large part. They went online to get their news. They weren't listening to the CNNs or the New York Times. They were going to places like Gateway Pundit and Twitter and Facebook. A lot of people got their news from Facebook. Drudge Report, Breitbart. These were the places they were going to get their information. So Columbia Journalism Review came out with this study. And what they found was that in this study that Gateway Pundit, which is my little website, which at the time I think I was doing 90% of the articles. I had some other people who contributed. Gateway Pundit ended up being the fourth most influential conservative website in the 2016 election. I thought that was pretty phenomenal. And I cite that study quite a bit. And it was because we were telling them the other side of the story. And so what was interesting was on the right, people were going to, Breitbart was very influential. They were very much pro-Trump and they were very influential. Fox News, Gateway Pundit, Daily Caller, and some others, Conservative Treehouse, InfoWars, TruthFeed. That's where people were, on the right, were getting their news. On the left, they were going to the traditional news outlets, like the New York Times, Huffington Post, Washington Post, so they were still going there. So this study by the Columbia Journalism Review was funded by the Open Society. And if you're familiar with that group, that's George Soros's group. So again, they wanted to find out what happened in the election because they want to prevent it from happening again. So they found, George Soros funded this study, and that's what they found out. They found out that people were going through Facebook and Twitter to get their news. And so then that was in March. And in August, a similar study came out in Harvard, and they found the same thing. I think they were using the same results, actually. But it was basically a very similar study where they found that conservatives, again, were going through Fox News, talk radio, some of these, publishers, the online, and they disregarded the mainstream media, and they just quit listening. If you get told how awful Trump is all the time, you start to tune it out. Or if you hear, how awful conservatives are and how brilliant Barack Obama and his policies were, you start tuning that stuff out. So we had a very successful year in 2016, and our traffic went, for Gateway Pundit, it's a little blog I started in 2004, and it's grown. I used to have, 2 or 3 readers a day, my twin brother, my buddy Chris, my mother once in a while, and she passed away, God rest her soul. But it's grown over the years, and in 2016, by election time, we were getting 1 million readers a day, because we were getting all this we were putting out the other side of the story, so we were getting an incredible amount of traffic. In 2015, we had 77 million visits that year from readers. In 2016, we had 182 million. So we went up significantly, 182 million visitors for the year. And I'm just kind of laying that out. That's where we were. That's what was happening. And then the reason that I wanted to talk today is because I wanted to tell you what happened since then. Okay? And there's hope at the end of this story, so I hope you pay attention. But it's been a crazy road. When Trump won, I had been in contact with the Trump campaign during the election. I think Trump actually retweeted Gateway Pundit at least 20 times. That was awesome. You know, I was like, that's great. It's funny because the left, again, they tracked all these things after the election to figure out who was stirring this up, where were people getting their news. So we announced that we were going to have a White House reporter, which was really a kick because, I'm just a little bloggy blog. And I hired this friend who was from New York, and he was going to be the Gateway Pundit reporter in the White House. And we talked to the White House, and they said, sure, you can do that. So I hired Lucian Wintrich, and he went into the White House. And I got to tell you, what I've learned today, you go through experiences, you're not sure what to expect. Those people, you see how mean they are, those reporters on television, and how disrespectful they are to this president, how absolutely shameless these people are, and the attacks they have. Jim Acosta got most suppressed from this last press conference that Trump did. But I thought the most awful question, and he's just a display. I can't believe they sent him in there. I think it's atrocious, his behavior. But there was a woman from PBS who actually, it was PBS or NPR, I think it was PBS, and she asked him, they're saying your supporters are white supremacists. Do you know that? What do you say about that, that your supporters are white supremacists? Have you ever heard of anything so offensive? I mean, the fact that they get away with this, it's just so toxic, these people. So that the way they treated the president, we had no idea that they were going to treat my reporter, Lucian Wintrich, like this. Lucian is a young, attractive, gay conservative from New York who went to Bard College and is very intelligent and witty, and people love this guy. And he's in the White House. He's been there for a couple of weeks, and the people, they just give him a cold shoulder, I went to one of the pressers. It was actually when Trudeau was in D.C., and I went into the White House with Lucian. And one of the reporters, we're having fun. I'm talking, and I'm talking to the Canadian reporters, and one of them said to me, "You're not in this press pool, are you?" Right? I said, "No, I'm visiting, and Lucian's here." And she goes, "Because you're too nice, And it's very true. It's kind of funny, but being Midwesterners, we generally just try to get along, be nice to people, respect people. So I thought that was interesting. About a week after that, Lucian was in the White House, and they knew that Gateway Pundit had a reporter in the White House. And this actually, it was a reporter, journalist from Fox Radio, who I'd never heard of, but came up to Lucian, and he has this full-time pass membership to get into the press corps every day. He went up to Lucian, and Lucian was trying to get into the restroom before the press conference started with, I think it was Sean Spicer then. And this reporter blocked him and wouldn't let him in. He's like, excuse me. And he goes in, and then Lucian comes out, and in front of this whole room, we've seen that room of reporters, this guy, before the presser started screaming at Lucian and saying, "You're a racist. You're a racist, and you're an anti-Semite, and you don't belong here." And he started pointing at the black reporters in the room and said, and he was talking to them saying, "This guy doesn't like you. He's an anti-Semite. He's a racist." Which, of course, it was like, I worked in HR for a while. I write full time now, but during my career, I worked in HR. If you did that at any other business that I know of, they'd call you into the office and they'd say, what's going on? What are you doing? Knock it off. This isn't acceptable. You can't, it's funny, the left always talks about bullies, right? They bullied the hell out of my reporter that day. And then when the conference was over, they stalked him and chased him out of the White House. And April Ryan confronted him and said, "Are you a racist? You're a racist?" Lucian's grandfather escaped Poland during World War II, his Jewish grandfather. He wrote about it, and he's not an anti-Semite. Let me just safely say Lucian is not an anti-Semite. He's not a racist. He has plenty of friends. He's had boyfriends of any color. So it's just, it's stunning that this is the kind of treatment they had. But now that we see these confrontations in the White House, you understand these are the type of people who were in there. They were awful. How they treated Lucian was awful. We had to go through a couple different steps of when we had to, you get these different levels, and then you get your full-time golden pass, permanent pass. And that's what CNN was crying about a couple weeks ago when they took it away from Jim Acosta. But you have to go through these series of steps. The first step, I was told, was this Senate press gallery pass. And they said, the people who talked to me, we talked to some people, oh, everybody gets that, it's no big deal. Hundreds of organizations, Al Jazeera, the Russians, all these different nationalities have a press pass for the Senate. So we put in our application and we're denied, okay? And we're like, okay, what is this about? And they give us some reason. The left always has some crappy reason. They say that we didn't have enough original content, okay? Now, if you go to our website, everything we put up is either a rebuttal or we're putting up something that someone else isn't reporting. So it's just, it was just a bogus complaint. So I decided I was going to challenge this, and so I hired this big Bloomberg attorney, and who cost me a lot of money. And we went in for our hearing a month or two later, and we go in and we sit down at the hearing, and you know what? This brilliant attorney, who was a very nice person, but he thought that he could talk them into accepting us because of the principles of the Constitution and free speech. And he gave a speech for 20 minutes in front of this board. And the board is made up of all of these six, they have a rotating, it's 6 individuals, they're nominated each year. They're all from left-wing websites, okay? I looked up of course, I'm curious who we're dealing with here. So I look up these names. One website isn't even a website. It's not even a news site. It's an advertisement. I went and I'm like, so this guy's on the board? It's an ad. You go there and it's like they're advertising a conference or something. Not even a website. And there was another suspect website. And then the rest were like, I had a political reporter we were talking to, somebody from The Hill, a couple others, all left-wing, all part of the club, the DC club. We spoke to them, and we left the room, and a half hour later, Daily Beast, this liberal website, calls us up and said, hey, I heard you didn't get your pass. I'm like, really? Well, I didn't hear that yet. You think they would have the courtesy, decency, respect to let us know? No, we walked out of the room, and they said they didn't even talk about it. They just moved on to the next thing. They didn't give us our pass. So this was like supposedly the first step, and we were still getting resistance there. So people don't realize that all of these little separate organizations and cliques all over Washington D.C. You're not. We see now, and I should see. I've learned a lot. But I didn't know at the time that we were going to get so much pushback. So that was very unfortunate. I still have a reporter who goes in occasionally to the White House. We've gotten some good stories, but it kind of wakes you up when you go through an experience like this. I wish I would have known some things before we walked into it. I just figured people would be decent people, and we were wrong. There's a lot of people who aren't decent, and a lot of liberals in the media who are not decent. I thought I'd mention another thing. In 2017, I started to talk a little bit about the WikiLeaks. It's complete disaster now. It's not just me. It's Breitbart. I noticed Joe DeGeneva, this brilliant lawyer who used to be a top district attorney in Washington, D.C., he's his wiki page is just awful. It's just, it's like, this guy's a conspiracist, and it just goes on and on. So we're battling that. The other thing is, before I move on to, online, because I have a lot of information about that, but we also get violent threats. And I mentioned some of that at dinner tonight. But about a month ago, Tucker Carlson from Fox News, and you may have seen this in the news, his house was attacked. And he wasn't home, his wife was home. She hid in the pantry. And these Antifa people, they call themselves anti-fascist, which is, again, with the left, it's the complete opposite. These are fascists who want to shut you down because they don't like what you're saying. And so they had met outside his house. They were threatening his house. They vandalized his driveway, his car, I believe windows or something, or a door. Anyway, the police came, and it was unfortunate for Tucker that this happened, and it got a lot of press. In fact, we had a big story on that was up on the Drudge Report, which is very influential, and we were writing about that. The next day, the police in my township, I live over in a suburb, they come knocking on my door, and they say, Jim, we just want to notify you, we got some information from the St. Louis department, from the Washington, D.C. Police Department. Your name has been put on a list. You're on this list. They said you may have seen something about Tucker Carlson. Well, your name is on this same list. So they're watching my home. They're doing patrols. I live on a street where if something happens, I'll call the police and they'll kick him right out. But so it's not just that you get a little pushback here and there, but you also get violent threats. And so that's what's happening to my life today. It's kind of scary when that happens because it just happened the night before to Tucker Carlson. And I'm putting up the security cameras because I don't want to be bothered with that. Another thing, so there's physical risks and threats. Another thing that happened, I saw this immediately in 2017, January. The left knew we had a lot of influence in the election. They knew we had a lot of traffic, we're getting a lot of big stories. What happened is, people don't realize this. Amazon, Facebook, Google, they not only have their businesses, and Amazon has his business, and Bezos also owns the Washington Post, who writes nasty things about me. But they also run the largest online advertising agencies in the world, are by these three companies. They control 60 to 70% of the ads that go online. Okay? So imagine all of this, money going to these ads. What happened after the election was, all of a sudden our ad rate went way down. And I don't really know how much I should say in public, but I get my money from advertising, which is, not a surprise. But they cracked down, and all of a sudden we're seeing our ad rate is down half of what it was. And it took us years to get up to this great rate we had. And anyway, we couldn't figure it out for a couple months. Finally, one of our advertisers, there's different levels. You work with this group, who works with this group, who works with Amazon, who works, in Amazon, online, they're not selling their products from their website. They're selling, they're doing these ad line. It's a completely different business. Anyway, it's a very large business. What they did was in January of 2017, immediately after the election, they labeled us, and we found out later, because one of our advertisers said, well, Jim, we just found out they're labeling you undesirable. Okay? Something you'd hear from, if you were in India, the class of people. And so they listed us undesirable, and so they wouldn't put our ads on our site, and that's why our rate went down half, because they had to fill it with other advertisers, because Amazon was such a big part of their business. So we had to deal with that. So they attack you any way they can to destroy you. Since 2017, I had two crazy lawsuits, and John mentioned a couple of those things. Never had a lawsuit in 14 years, never. All of a sudden, I get this crazy lawsuit, and I had Reuters call me. A Reuters reporter called me and said, yeah, you're getting sued. You have a comment on it? I'm like, how did you know this? Who told you? You know, where are you getting your information? Right? She wouldn't tell me. She hung up. So she knew. She had her contacts before I knew. And then I had another crazy lawsuit happen. So it's just another way. Alex Jones at InfoWar, very prominent conservative website, he's had like 19 lawsuits in the past year and a half. They just, it's a way you have to pay money, and you have to defend yourself. It's stressful, and it's just a way to destroy you. So I've had a couple of those things. And then, of course, we have these crazy hit pieces. In 2017, what we started seeing was with our social media, Facebook and Twitter, our Facebook numbers were going down. We couldn't figure out what the hell's going on. So I talked to several other, I have friends who have some other prominent conservative websites. And they're saying, Jim, it's the same thing with us. Our traffic's going way down. And so what Facebook has done is they have shut down most of the conservative traffic, right? Now, my theory, and I feel very strongly about this, is in 2018, last month, conservatives lost the female suburban vote. My theory, and I feel very strongly about this because I'm going to tell you some numbers here in a minute, is that the women or the men who would get home at night and look at their Facebook page, they used to get Gateway Pundit, they used to get Breitbart, they used to get Western Journal, they used to get Young Cons, they used to get all this information. They're not getting it anymore because Facebook shut it down. And what they did was, they did it, I saw this, I was watching this. Our traffic went from, Facebook used to be a third of our traffic. Then it was all of a sudden, a sixth of our traffic. Then it's down to about an eighth of our traffic. And then by this past March, they basically shut most of our traffic down to Facebook. So it used to be a third of our traffic, about 33% of our traffic for Gateway Pundit was from Facebook. And now it's 2%. Okay? So they will not allow our stories to go viral. They will not allow people to read our information. And what they do then is they say, well, it's, they hired these fact checkers, which is a scam in itself because they're all liberal. And so then we have, these people saying, we had one story we wrote about the Super Bowl in 2017, might have been 2018, might have been this year. And the Black Lives Matter activists went to the media day and said, we're going to shut down the Super Bowl this year. They had a big banner and they dropped it in the Super Bowl media day up in Minnesota. And so we wrote about it. They took that story down. They said it was fake news. We had the pictures. We had the video. We have their words, and they're saying it's a fake news story. So they take this down, one of the leftist fact checkers. 2 days later, 3 days, at the Super Bowl in Minnesota, Black Lives Matter went out. They chained themselves together and shut down the train to the Super Bowl. So we were right on that story. It was good information, but they didn't like it and they called it fake news. So this is what they're doing. They're calling it fake news, or else they're calling your stuff hate speech. And so that's how they start cracking down on conservatives. They even hit Donald Trump's Facebook page. I wrote a note on that. His traffic has gone down 45% in the past year. Donald Trump, right? The most talked about person in the universe. His Facebook page is down 45%. In the meantime, Elizabeth Warren and some of these other liberals, their traffic continues to climb. Okay? Tell me this is not a scam. Tell me this is not planned. Tell me this is not purposeful. I won't believe it. I've had discussions with Facebook. I've spoken with several conservatives, and they're all saying the same thing. And Facebook is denying this. They're denying that this has happened. So what I did was I went out and there's tracking websites. You can pay some money to get tracking numbers for different websites, how much traffic they're getting, what percent is Facebook. And so I went out and I got information on several websites. What I found was that from January 2017 to May 2018, conservatives lost 93% of their traffic online from Facebook. 93% going through Facebook, they lost. And I checked the websites. Gateway Pundit, Independent Journal Review used to be huge, huge. They hardly have anything. Conservative Tribune used to be huge. They're basically shut down. Conservative Tribune went to 40 million readers a month, down to about 1,500. Okay? The numbers are just startling. 100% fed up, same thing. Young Cons, again, very popular, and it's popular with young kids too. They had a lot of people were getting their articles, they'd be passed around a lot. Their traffic went from 9 million a month down to about 1,700. Okay? And they're telling us that nothing's happening. Western Journal did their own study, and they found that on average, liberal sites in the past year actually grew by a certain percent, neutral sites grew by 12%, and conservative sites were down by 27%. So that was just another study that confirms that this is going on. Gateway Pundit, they have a list of all these websites in, and Gateway Pundit's the one that was hit the worst. So they basically took, Facebook came in, they weren't going to allow this to happen again. They knew people were getting their information from Facebook and social media, so they shut it down. So I've been speaking, that's why I spoke in September in Congress to speak out about this. And I'm very glad it took me months to get in there and I spoke about it. I don't know what's going to happen. I think people need to wake up, though. I think the party needs to wake up, because they're losing. We don't have a lot of ways to communicate our message. This was a very successful way, and they have to do more than just have a couple meetings with Facebook. They have to do more, because all of my friends are losing all of their traffic. This is a major means of how we get our information. I threw this tweet from WikiLeaks. The Russians, right? I don't believe it was the Russians, but WikiLeaks got John Podesta's information. And they found that in the WikiLeaks, Mark Zuckerberg asked John Podesta, Hillary's main person, to see if he would stop in and visit, to see if Hillary could stop in while she was in town. So this was one of those private emails that got leaked. So we know that the left has been helping out Democrat candidates. They bragged about it when Obama ran in 2012. And yet then when this Cambridge Analytica came out, you found out they helped Republicans some. Oh my gosh, the left was like, oh, this is the worst thing that ever happened. Because they were helping us. Not because it's the wrong thing to do, because they bragged about it 4 years earlier. When Obama did it, they thought it was so brilliant. It was a brilliant strategy. But when Republicans do it, they can't have this. So then we started getting these crazy attacks online. NPR ran a story linking Gateway Pundit and Breitbart to Macedonian bloggers. Okay? I mean, it's crazy. They're calling me fake news and they're putting this nonsense out there. I mean, it's absolutely nonsense. Another story came out, this was recently, and they're just saying all these crazy things about Gateway Pundit and how they're reading, dog whistles for racism and stuff. It's very upsetting. Some of my friends, we also found out this year that then Twitter has been shadow banning a lot of conservative sites too. So Donald Trump's site, some. But a lot of close friends of mine, Mike Cernovich, Paul Joseph Watson, myself, Laura Loomer just got kicked off of Twitter. So Twitter is also cracking down on conservatives. They say they're cracking down on hate speech. And Apple's CEO came out last week and said we're going to crack down on hate speech, okay? Whenever they say hate speech, You know what they're talking about? They're talking about conservatives, okay? That's their number one, that's who they're going to crack down on. And as a great example of that, there's a rapper named T.I. who put out a video a month or two ago. It was out on October 12th, okay? And in this video, it has Melania Trump. Donald Trump is going out of the, away, but Melania is staying home. And this rapper is sitting in the Oval Office, and Melania Trump, the actress, it's not her, it's an actress, trying to pretend like she's her, comes in, and she's a stripper and a prostitute. And they do this little dance, and it's disgusting, okay? And that's our First Lady. We're so privileged to have that woman as our First Lady. Brilliant, gracious, classy, lovely in every way, and this is what they do. This was on Twitter, and I looked it up last night because I knew I was speaking today. It's still up. And in the meantime, they're getting rid of my friend Laura Loomer and some other people who are conservatives because they're just too offensive. It's hate speech, So again, it always seems to go in one way. So I also brought a few stories where the left likes to say that we're fake media, fake news. So here was a story about Gateway Pundit. This story was about me. It was on the front of the Washington Post, one of the second, third most read newspaper in America. And they wrote about how Gateway Pundit was the center of the bogus crisis actors meme, okay? When these Parkland kids, the shooting was there, tragedy, it's horrible, and some people started saying that these kids who were being used as spokespeople were crisis actors. One of my writers wanted to put that on Gateway Pundit. I said, no, we're not going to put that up. I said, no, because that's all they're going to see is crisis actors, and they're going to, I know how I'm pretty good at knowing how the left works. So I said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to put that up. Oh, Jimmy, we need to put that up. No, we're not going to use that term. We did not use that term. And then within a month, they're blaming us on the Washington Post for being the ones behind the crisis actor meme, okay? And that's on my Wikipedia page too. We've never said that, never said it, right? We had one video up of David Hogg, this kid, Parkland High School kid, who was being talked to and talked through on this video, and we said it looks like he's being coached, okay? Now, 90% of the people who saw that video would say it looks like he's being coached, right? Because they're stopping, they're suggesting, we could start over, all this stuff, right? So our story was very good, and yet this is the kind of crap they throw at us. Another story, I'll just go through a couple more. CNN wrote a story on fake news, and the story was about a Pepsi CEO who had said such and such on some day, and they said, and this was Gateway Pundit who said this, right? And I'm reading this article, and I'm like, we never said that, So they wrote an article on fake news, and they're blaming us for being behind this story, and we never even said it. So I did get a lawyer, and we wrote CNN, and they retracted their story. Right? So we got them to take that story down. So I'm very glad you have to stand up to these people. So that happened. It's amazing to me, they call us fake news, and yet the Washington Post won a Pulitzer for their journalism on the Russia collusion, right? I have yet to see any Russia collusion anywhere, except with Hillary and the FBI and some of these spies they had hired who were infiltrating Trump's campaign. That was all that I've seen. And yet they win a Pulitzer for that, right? Well, we get attacked and crushed. And then Washington Post, who loves to attack us, they were the ones who put out that I was behind the crisis actor thing. But they put out garbage all the time. They put out this garbage about the Russians had hacked the Vermont utility. It was a huge story across America. It's complete crap. Never happened. They put out a story that Comey was asking for more funds to investigate Trump before he was hired. Anyway, they had a couple. They put out crap all the time. And the thing is, we correct our articles. A lot of these people, they keep it up for a couple days. So there's that. When I went to Congress, I showed them this diagram, and I left some on that table over there. But what it shows is that during the election, the left went to, I could hand out a couple of those if you want to. The left was going to their traditional websites. The right was going to their own different, people online. After the election, what Facebook did is they shut all these sites down. These sites are still going. These sites have all been hit or eliminated on Facebook. So I put this together, and Congress liked it because it just shows you that the leading publishers on the right during the election, they're getting shut down. It is Christmas, though, and so I wanted to bring a message of hope. So I was very excited. I put a couple notes down here. When I went into Congress, I was able to tell my story. I was able to put some information in the congressional record, and so it's there now. And I have got some calls from some lawmakers asking for questions next week. They're going to ask to talk with Google in them, and so at least they're coming to me and asking for questions, which is good. The other good news is Facebook shut down our traffic. I told you it used to be a third of our traffic. It's down to about 2%. In 2017, our traffic grew anyway. And we went to over 200 million pages read, visitors for the year. Okay, 200 million. So we went up another 25 million in 2017. This year, they shut down my Facebook traffic almost completely, It's 2% now of our traffic every day. And yet, already, we've had our best year ever. So we're still getting traffic, and people are still coming to our website, and we've replaced our traffic numbers from Facebook with just people who like what they're reading, and they come back time and time again. So that's very good news. In 2007, I went to Prague, and President Bush was giving a speech. And I'm going to wrap this up real quick. But George Bush was giving a speech in Prague to a bunch of dissidents. He collected the most dissidents ever that a president had spoken to. And there were like 90 different countries represented. And I was honored to go there and talk to some of these people. And it was in Prague, Czech Republic. And while I was there, I got a tour of the Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty headquarters, which is stationed in Czech Republic. And I heard the most amazing story, and that was that in the Cold War times, America and the West was shooting out all these channels and all these, radio stations, channels to the people in these Iron Curtain, and they were getting their information. And the guy said to me, he said, and what would happen is the regime, Russia or one of these communist regimes, they'd catch on to the frequency that this station was broadcasting on, so they'd shut it down, they'd block it. And what happened was in Radio Free Europe or Radio Liberty then would find a different channel or a different frequency, and they'd start broadcasting out to a different frequency. And what they told me was that despite all the problems they were having, despite all the challenges, the people always came and found them again. The people always came and found their radio station because they wanted to know the truth. And so that gives me hope today, because there's a lot of people. We need people to tell the truth. We need people to be disruptors like Donald Trump has been. And so that really gives me a lot of hope. And I also did a Gateway Eagle Council this year, which was great. It was a great opportunity to bring in some people from Europe and America, and we had a wonderful conference. I put on my first conference with the Eagle Council people, Phyllis Schlafly's old group. So that was another great thing that happened in the year. And then I had something that happened. This kind of goes with the Illinois-Iowa story. And my parents grew up in Herring, Iowa. It's a little town. It's not even on the map anymore. It used to have a creamery, a couple bars, several homes, a stockyard, a train station, a grocery store that my grandfather ran, a post office. So it was, one of these little Midwest towns. And I didn't realize this, but a lot of those towns were built on the railroad lines, through Illinois and Missouri and Iowa. And so that's where they put the little towns every so often, so they'd have a stop for mail and different things. So my grandmother ran the depot, and my grandfather later ran the country store. Well, everybody moved away from the town, and the highways were built, and that got rid of a lot of these small little towns. And then as farming has changed, people don't have the big families anymore. So obviously, Iowa, Illinois, these rural states have changed quite a bit. But I went back a few years ago, and I realized that the only structure that's left standing is a flagpole. It's out in this cornfield, and I was told that my grandfather, when he was 12, in 1918, on Armistice Day, which is November 11, the town put up this flagpole, and my grandfather was 12 at the time and helped put it up. And so I saw this flag out there in the field, so I spoke with a farmer, and I bought this little plot of land, what's left of Herring, Iowa, the flagpole. So this year, Steve King, who's a representative up there from Iowa, who's actually a very good man and who gets smeared consistently by this media, awful things. If you want to know the truth about Steve King, this past fall they were calling him, and they still call him, a white supremacist, right? Steve went to Austria during one of these breaks before the election, and he met with a group of Austrian politicians. There was one guy there from, I believe it's called the People's Party. And this People's Party had a founder from 50 years ago who was a Nazi, who was part of the Nazis. If you look back 50 years ago in Austria and Germany and several of these countries, the young men were forced, this wasn't really a choice. You were either going to be in the Nazi Party or you were, it wasn't a big choice. Anyway, one of the founders was a remnant from the Nazi regime. They're conservative. They're pro. It's not like Nazis at all. It's part of the government actually. It's the third largest party. So the people respect it, but the media has made up this boogeyman that this party's a neo-Nazi party. Steve went into this room. I found out later there was 2 gays who were politicians. There was a Jewish man. There was one guy from this party, and there were several other people in this meeting. And Steve told me, Jim, I can't talk about this because this was off the record. So he comes back here, and the media slams him for being in a neo-Nazi party, right? So now, when they talk about him on the news, or you'll hear people talk about this man, he is a good man. They call him a white supremacist. They'll say there's a white supremacist in the Republican Party. Nobody defended him on the right, which is a tragedy, I think, in itself. But I wrote about this because it's tragic how they take good people and destroy them like that. Anyway, he came to Herring. He actually his home is like a few miles from Herring, where the little town I bought. And we did a rededication this year. And we rededicated this flagpole on the 100-year anniversary. And I thought that was so cool because it represents, this is who we are. This is a sacrifice that the people made when they came to these parts of the country. My ancestors, and I'm sure like many of yours, when they came to this part of the country, they were given 3 years to make this plot of land they were given productive. And if it didn't work out, they took the land back. That's the story I was told. These were gritty people. Northern Iowa is very cold, right? Out in the tundra. I grew up in northern Iowa. So it's like, blizzards and snow fences. And these people, they made it work. These are the people who are in middle America. These are the people that the left wants to completely, ruin, destroy, smear. These are good people. And so it was a wonderful event. And it gives me hope, and it's something I don't want to forget about. I've had a lot of challenges, but things are getting better. Our website is growing, and I'll continue to fight because it's the right thing to do. And Billy Graham, I ran into this Christmas message of his last night, and I'll close with this. But he said in 1969, Billy Graham said this. He said, "The Christmas message has not changed in 2,000 years. Christmas still reminds us that God is with us. In spite of the pessimism and cynicism, in spite of all the headlines about murders, assassinations, riots, demonstrations, and war, Jesus Christ is alive. He is alive to conquer despair, to impart hope, to forgive sins, and to take away our loneliness. He is alive to reconcile us to God." So I thought I'd leave that with you tonight. I thought that was beautiful. Anyway, Merry Christmas. Thanks for having me.